Haruki Murakami is probably most well known for his novels that contain questionable sapphic love scenes, cats, and lengthy descriptions of food. His novels are famous because of these tropes, and also because of the magical realist elements that are fused with mystery. Many times, magical realism is informed by the author's culture and different mythologies. However, while researching Murakami's works, especially those novels written in the 2000s, I found that the magical realism in these books are actually more inspired by what Murakami learned in his interviews of the victims and victim families of those affected by the Tokyo gas attacks in 1995, and also the interviews he conducted with former and present members of the armed cult which orchestrated the attack. I wanted to explore how Murakami expresses what he learned through these interviews and his magical realism, especially whenever it comes to the novel 1Q84. And that leads us to this video. So before I get into this essay, I first want to give y'all a little background information on the Tokyo gas attacks. The Tokyo sarin or gas attacks occurred on March 20th, 1995. Thousands of people using the subway system during rush hour traffic were affected, and many of them were seriously injured and needed to be hospitalized. 12 people died. This event was devastating, especially because it followed the Kobe earthquake by 3 months. The attack was orchestrated by Shirinko, a cult founded and led by Shogo Asahara, born Shizuo Matsumoto. What first started as a somewhat controversial group focused on health and healing from the high-powered life, somewhat based in mysticisms from other countries, soon turned into a radical group. However, it is important to note that many of the members of were not radicalized, and those who maintained their membership after the attacks distanced themselves from the attacks and insisted that they had no idea of the secret plans for terrorism. Dozens of people were tried in connection with these attacks, and Asahara and about a dozen other people received the death penalty and were executed in 2018, 23 years after the attack. These attacks caused many people to question the world and the people around them. In many ways, some people felt ignorant and helpless because they could not understand why or what was happening to them, which leads us to 1Q84. So actually 1Q84 is 3 novels in one, so there's a lot going on. It's really large. There's just so much. So for the purpose of this video and for clarity and things like that, I'm going to give a very, 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 very simplified version of the plot just to get us started. So basically, the novel focuses on 3 main characters. One is Aomame, who is an assassin who kills men with an ice pick who are abusive towards their families. 2 is Tango, who is a cram school math teacher who wants to be a writer but doesn't have any good ideas, and he ends up editing Air Chrysalis, which is the novel that everyone in Japan is talking about. And 3, Fuga Eri, who is the daughter of the leader of the Sagigake cult, who ran away from home and who wrote Air Chrysalis. So all 3 of these characters end up in a somewhat parallel world, which Aomame calls 1Q84, but they are not the ones who are truly in control. Fuga Eri states, "The professor has big power and deep wisdom, but the little people have just as deep wisdom and big power as he does. Important things are in the forest, and the little people are in the forest too. To make sure the little people don't harm you, you have to find something the little people don't have." The little people are an invisible force for most of the characters in Haruki Murakami's 1Q84, and even after Fuga Eri writes about them in a book, people still do not believe in this entity. As I found in my research, many scholars discount the little people in their analysis of this novel, maybe because Murakami refuses to define them. However, I believe that we see the creation of the little people and their power in Murakami's nonfiction work Underground. Murakami interviewed various former and present ALM members after the Tokyo gas attack. Through these interviews, the author draws a 3D picture of ALM members and their experiences in the organization. However, readers do not gain a concrete reason why ALM and Asahara were so successful or why the organization changed from a peaceful one to a perpetrator of a terrorist attack. Murakami gives his readers an answer in The Little People. He explores cult elements that he learned about through his interviews with ALM members, recreates these elements in 1Q84, and attributes them to the little people because of their hidden and unexplained nature. Cults work well with certain personality types, and Murakami finds that many ALM believers were always brooding over the meaning of life. This pattern shows certain people are a good match for certain cults depending on the nature of the organization's beliefs. This pattern shows that certain people are a good match for certain cults depending on the nature of the organization's beliefs. Even if someone has the desired characteristics for a cult, the leader must mold the members into the type of followers they want. Former ALM member Hajime Musutani notes that what Mr. Matsumoto Asahara did was equate self and attachments. He said that, in order to get rid of the ego, the self must be disposed of as well. Humans love the self, so they suffer, and if the self can be discarded, then a shining true self will emerge. The self is what should be discovered, not discarded. Therefore, Asahara wanted the members to lose their sense of self, turning them into a different type of people, post-human people without individuality or autonomy. However, it is impossible to know why Asahara held this goal, which makes it difficult to define the real values of ALM, especially at the time of the gas attack, and it causes people to question his humanity as well. In 1Q84, everyone, even the cult leader, is controlled by the little people, questioning the autonomy of people. Everyone in the world of 1Q84 seems normal. However, many of the people are not real people, especially those in the Sagigake cult, a cult that resembles ALM. Fukaeri writes in her novel about the little people that they create air chrysalises, which Florina Illis describes as a type of surrogate matrix within which the embryo develops. An embryo whose yet unclear features or characteristics carry the genes of a new biological mutation. Each air chrysalis holds a dota, which is a replica of its maza. As the little people explain it, you are the same you in every way. A dota is just the shadow of the maza's heart and mind in the shape of the maza. And this dota becomes a passageway for the little people to enter into this world. And this dota becomes a passageway for the little people to enter into the world. As a result, the dota is a post-human body because it is made for the purpose of others and has no autonomy because it is controlled by the little people. Even though dotas look like regular people, they act strangely. One prime example of this is Fukaeri. When readers first meet Fukaeri, Murakami writes that she is a small girl, small all over, and her face was more beautiful than in the pictures. Her most attractive facial feature was her deep, striking eyes. She hardly blinked and seemed almost not to be breathing. He further notes, her style of speaking has some distinguishing characteristics: sentences shorn of embellishment, a chronic shortage of inflection, a limited vocabulary. Through these descriptions, readers envision someone who has robotic characteristics, or at least someone with no type of personality or individuality, leading readers to believe that Fukaeri is a dota. While none of the ALM members have robotic characteristics, many of them report their bodies doing things that most people cannot imagine. Mitsuhara Inaba had to quit his job as a teacher because, as I continued my training, I got immersed in astral. My subconscious began to emerge, and my sense of reality grew faint. Some ALM members found that the higher up you advanced, the less sleep you needed. Lots of people only slept 3 hours a day. ALM members' bodies changed while in the cult. However, the change of the body does not necessarily create a post-human body. The most important ingredient for a post-human body lies in some type of mind control, ridding people of autonomy and allowing someone or something else to control them. Inaba expresses relief of not having to think, saying, I didn't have to worry about human relationships or responsibilities. Like when you're a new employee at a company, you just do what the people above tell you to do. Psychologically, it's a great relief. While reading these interviews, readers can see how individual thought was not encouraged for most of the ALM members. Masutani believes, at first, everyone who joined had very strong wills, but after living in ALM, you'd lose that. No matter how dissatisfied you might be with ALM life, it was preferable to life outside. Living with a group of like-minded people, it was psychologically easier to stay put. Therefore, ALM members were not encouraged to think for themselves, ideally transforming them into post-human bodies with no sense of self. I believe this can lead to people committing acts that they do not want to do, or normally would not want to do. We see this idea in the sexual encounter of the leader and the girls of the Sakigake cult in 1Q84. The leader describes these encounters to Aomame as extended periods of paralysis during which time he has an erection. 3 young girls in the cult take turns mounting me and having sexual relations with me. I have no feeling at all, but I do ejaculate. One of these girls is Fuka Eri, so we can assume that the other 2 girls are dotas, especially since the little people use one of these girls as a passageway. As post-human bodies, dotas do not have complete autonomy of their bodies. Therefore, readers can infer that the little people control these girls and make them mount the leader because they are hoping for a miracle through heavenly grace. The little people want to keep their power in this world, and they need an interpreter to allow them to enact their wishes in the world. However, even the interpreter does not have bodily autonomy because the leader, the current interpreter, is forced into states of paralysis for procreational purposes. Therefore, the bodies in the parallel world 1Q84 are not the same bodies in 1984 because everyone, even the powerful, is controlled by the little people. Illis notes that as characters were traveling from 1984 to 1Q84, their bodies naturally reproduced, cloned, themselves in a form adapted to the new world, namely the bodies with a Q. We see a similar experience with Tango and Fuka Eri. Tango has a dream about Aomame, the person he's been in love with since grade school. And during this dream, he experiences the same sexual encounter that the leader describes to Aomame. Tango has no control over his body, and Fuka Eri seems to be a sort of guide or interpreter for the little people during this moment. However, instead of Fuka Eri becoming pregnant, Aomame ends up pregnant from this encounter. Fuka Eri tells Tango, "You have no need to move it." He responds, "I do have a need to move it. It's my body." The only bodies that can enter a parallel world are post-human bodies. As a result, only certain people can enter 1Q84, and even fewer notice the changes. I think the same rules apply for ALM because it is its own parallel world. Many ALM members joined the cult because they were searching for fulfillment and answers in their commercial lives, and they found their answers in a parallel world ALM leadership generated. Former ALM member Haruki Murakami found that the people in one of ALM's dojos were all very calm, serene even, and I was taken with this way of spending time. It was a world light years away from the noise and clamor of the company and commuting. I felt relaxed there. Irakura was not aware that she had entered a parallel world. but she had, introducing her to a new reality. The same occurrence happens to Aomame, transporting her into 1Q84. As Aomame climbs down the elevated expressway's emergency stairway to ensure that she arrives to an appointment on time, she cannot stop thinking about her love affair with her friend Tamaki. She knows that she has to concentrate on climbing down the stairs, but the thoughts would not go away. The images came to her one after another and with great vividness. Christopher Weinberger states that physical action produces the kinds of cognitive and affective transformation that it appears to symbolize, because reality itself is already manifestly symbolic. However, Aomame's physical movements are not the only clues readers receive that she is now in this parallel world. Aomame's mind changes as well. She cannot control her thoughts, and time became confused in her memory, like a tangled string. The straight line axis was lost, and forward and back, right and left, jumbled together. Shinichi Hosoi completed Shoko Asara's suggested remedy for overall bodily ailments, and he experienced a kundalini awakening. I felt a strong warmth like boiling water was coiling up my spine to my brain, as if it was wreaking havoc with the insides of my brain, writhing like a living thing. Here was something beyond control, something incredibly happening inside my body. Therefore, I think Aomame's thoughts are the reader's first clue that she is no longer in 1984. Hosoi and Aomame lose control of their bodies as they enter a parallel world. Hosoi is unable to explain his experience, but Murakami leads his readers to an answer with Aomame's experience. As we have seen, not just anyone can enter 1Q84, and the people in 1Q84, especially those with some sort of ties to Sagigake, are controlled by the little people. Readers can tell that Aomame wants to stop her brain from being distracted as she's climbing down the stairway, but she cannot. As the novel progresses, readers learn that Aomame's relationship with Tamaki is important for her understanding of herself, her purpose in 1Q84, and her plan to escape the little people. The little people force these images into Aomame's thoughts so that she can fully enter 1Q84. These experiences are readying people to fully enter a parallel world. Therefore, Aomame has to lose control of her mind in order to enter the parallel world, just as Hosoi had to lose control of his body to become fully healed. Even within a parallel world, there are multiple realities, as we see in the Aum cult. Many Aum leaders preached about Varahana Tantra and carried out misguided tenets of this belief in the Seren attack. While it is easy to believe that Varahana is an important tenet for all Aum members, Hiroyuki Kano asserts that Varahana was pie in the sky, completely unconnected with what we normally did or thought. It was just too far away. Therefore, Varahana doctrines were not a part of the everyday life of ordinary Aum members, which may explain why many members did not believe that Aum was the perpetrator of the Seren attack. Mayuki Kanda recalls, "I just can't believe it or comprehend it. When I was living as a renunciate, I never once killed anything, not a single cockroach or mosquito. I've practiced that always, and so has everyone else I know." Kanda's testimony shows that the lives of the top officials were very different from the average Aum member, and these leaders are the ones who carried out the attack. From this, we can guess that they lived in a different reality in Aum's parallel world. While the testimonies and underground support this theory, Murakami pushes against this idea of multiple realities in 1Q84. The leader of the Sagigake cult tells Aomame that this is no parallel world. You don't have 1984 over there and 1Q84 branching off over there, and the two worlds running along parallel tracks. The year 1984 no longer exists anywhere. For you and for me, the only time that exists anymore is this year of 1Q84. Readers learn this is not true because Aomame is able to leave 1Q84 with her boyfriend Tenga. Interestingly, Aomame does not realize that she is in 1Q84 until she sees a police officer and notices something unusual about his uniform. The design was more casual. His pistol, too, was a different model. Matthew Stretcher believes it would be most accurate, then, to envision one Q84 as a sidestep for time, not unlike opening one new circuit while closing off another. Murakami himself may have been concerned that his readers would misunderstand the point, for more than one character remarks that there can only be one reality at any given time. I believe that the idea of only one reality stems from Murakami's interviews with ARM members. I noticed that Murakami is skeptical of their beliefs and their desire to create a new reality, no matter how nobly they imagine it. Even so, I think we see where Murakami relies on the idea of multiple worlds and realities in 1Q84. While in 1Q84, Aomame notices that there are two moons in the sky, but she does not feel comfortable asking people what they see in the sky. She mentions it to her colleague Tamaru, and he even brings up how nice the night sky looks. Still, Aomame cannot ask him how many moons he has seen in that clear sky. It was too fraught with danger. This introduces the idea that 1984 and 1Q84 are so closely connected that people can communicate between the two worlds. Aomame and the AUM members cannot live in both worlds at the same time, but these worlds still communicate. Readers see that 1984 and 1Q84 appear the same, so we can guess the only real difference between the two is the little people. 1Q84 is a parallel world because of the unseen forces acting in that world and causing events that could not be easily explained in the quote-unquote real world of 1984. Therefore, the only answers we can find is in the supernatural and the things we cannot understand. The best way to convey these ideas is through literature, which can become a parallel world where the author acts as an unseen force on the characters and ideas. Readers can be transported into a different location or even someone's brain. Or, in the case of AUM members, reading philosophy books and AUM publications transported them into AUM's parallel world based in spiritualism. The majority of Murakami's novels employ literature to introduce and explain themes in the novel. Virginia Young believes that fiction within fiction highlights the novel's metafictional quality. We see fiction within fiction in Murakami's novels written before Underground, but I think the interviews with AUM members emphasize the importance of the written word. Many AUM members read various books on philosophy and religion, so they were primed to positively receive AUM's teachings that were semi-based in Buddhism and spiritualism. Murakami describes Asahara as a master storyteller who proved capable of anticipating the mood of the times. He was not deterred by the knowledge, whether conscious or not, that his ideas and images were recycled junk. Asahara deliberately cobbled bits and pieces from all around him and brought to them a singular flow. This description reminds me of fiction writing because many authors take different ideas and combine them into one novel, their own parallel world. And this story is what drew followers in. Akio Namamura subscribed to the AUM journal Mahayana from its very first issue. They took great care in presenting the experiences of actual believers, and has stories on how it became an AUM member. After a while, though, the magazine focused solely on Asahara, raising him higher and higher. These reading materials were vital to gain new members, and AUM's leadership understood this power. Asahara told Hosoi to learn bookbinding techniques because AUM is planning to open a printing factory. Much of what AUM published is a type of fiction, showing how important the fictional genre is in people's everyday lives. These works exposed everyday people to AUM doctrines, just as Fuka Eri's novel introduces ordinary people to the little people. Unlike the AUM magazines, Fuka Eri's novel does not drive people to look for the little people. In fact, it seems that life goes on, and most people in 1Q84 only see the little people as fictional characters in a best-selling novel. While Fuka Eri's novel captivates the imaginations of her audience, it does not cause them to think about the forces working in their lives or whether they are dotas and mazas. At least, Murakami does not give the reader any clues that people are contemplating these questions in 1Q84. Young notes, the idea of a story being more a mental discovery than an intellectual craft would seem less impenetrable if we contemplate happenings in the realistic world. When the complexity increases to such an extent that it is no longer possible for human power to control, it takes on an almost autonomous existence, as if it has a life of its own. Therefore, the little people are complex characters in 1Q84, and they are hard to describe in literature. Readers do not even know where they come from or what their end goal is, shrouding them in mystery, ensuring that they are a powerful force in the novel, even as the spiritually based testimonies were powerful recruiting tools for Om. The leader tells Aomame, probably no one knows for sure who the little people are. All the people are able to learn is that they exist. The little people are a mysterious force in 1Q84 that take control of people while hiding in plain sight. Still, they are very powerful because no one can see them or explain them. For many people, it is difficult to understand how someone joins a cult, especially because many of them become violent, as we see with and the Tokyo gas attack. I think Murakami found the same dilemma after interviewing members for Underground. Readers do not gain a clearer picture of Asahara or his goals, and one way to contextualize the attack is to imagine that a larger, unseen force is at work. Giorgio Amatrano writes, Murakami accepts messages from the unconscious without scrutinizing them. He brings them into his fiction, still imbued with mystery, and deftly builds stories around them, leaving their core unexplained and unexplored. I think Murakami created the little people from the unconscious of society, not just of The little people's role and power in the novel can connect them with many of the elements and problems of mentioned in Underground, but they can also be the cause of many problems members wanted to avoid in society as well. While questioning cult behaviors, Murakami makes his readers in everyday society question their behaviors as well, and the reasons behind why we do certain things, especially those actions that we rarely think about. The little people are mysterious and unexplained, placing them at the center of society, because many aspects of society remain unexplained as well. We do not know which world the little people are working in, but they are working unseen, continuing the beat of society. Ho ho, says the keeper of the beat. Ho ho, the other 6 join in. Hey y'all, I hope you enjoyed watching the video. If you enjoyed learning about Murakami and all his different ideas, these are the 2 books that I talked about today, Underground and 1Q84. He has a lot of other novels, but he is very picky about the ones that are published in English, which is just a fun little factoid for you. But his first really famous novel that catapulted him to fame was Minish Foot, which is right here, so that might be a good place to start. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe so that you will see my videos every single week, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!